Hey guys, welcome back to another Maledictor update. I believe this is 2 months put together again, but really there's only about 1 month of work in here for reasons we'll get into, but we'll get into that further down the patch notes, so let's just jump in here and start off with some shotgun balancing. So I'll go through the main changes first and then explain it. So shotgun pellets were reduced from 15 to 8, shotgun spread was reduced, shotgun max damage was reduced, and shotgun minimum damage was increased. So that kind of sounds like a big nerf for the shotgun, which it kind of is, because the shotgun was just way too strong. Not necessarily at close range. I liked it at close range. It was doing what I wanted it to, which is jibbing enemies up close. And I don't want to give too much of the code away, because I feel like that kind of makes a game boring when you know too much about the inner workings of it. But basically, what determines a jib on an enemy is if they take a lot more damage than is necessary to kill them. So I want the shotgun to be able to do a ton of damage up close, because that's, in video games, that's what shotguns are meant for. But it was a bit too strong at medium range. In fact, it was really, if the shotgun could hit somebody, then it would jib them. And so that was a little bit of a problem. It was starting to turn a little bit too much into a Doom 2 super shotgun scenario. So I reduced the amount of pellets, which is not just a nerf, really, because I can adjust, and I did adjust the damage per pellet to kind of keep the damage overall the same, within the same range. I obviously reduced the upper amount of damage, and I increased the minimum damage, but it still increased the damage per pellet. So the reason why I reduced the pellet amount was because that way it could be a little bit more consistent. And same with the spread. I reduced the spread on it to, again, make it more consistent. Because when you have almost double the amount of pellets, that's a lot more that could potentially miss or could potentially hit, especially when it comes to the spread. And so I mentioned the Doom 2 super shotgun being just way too good. So I didn't want it to turn into a Doom 3 shotgun scenario of just balancing the shotgun by reducing its damage or increasing its spread, because that makes it way too unreliable. The Doom 3 the Doom 3 shotgun was just, it was absurd. The spread on it was ridiculous. It could sometimes be a good gun and then sometimes not. So I want the shotgun not necessarily to be always perfectly predictable, but I want it to be a lot more reliable in terms of you have a situation where you choose to use the shotgun and you get about the expected outcome. Sometimes the damage might be more, sometimes the damage might be less, but the reason why this kind of works out is because with more damage per pellet, that means that when one pellet misses, you're missing out on a lot more damage. So that kind of naturally limits the range of it. As opposed to doing something like just reducing the amount of damage for all the pellets, that just makes it to where it feels a little too weak. So now you can jib people at close range still very easily, and you can even still sometimes jib people at medium range, but not anywhere near as often as it was before. So the shotgun seems like it is fitting into its role much better, and that also allows other guns to kind of come up and be useful as well. So overall, that's pretty nice. Next, fixed drone explosion type. I believe it was still using a particle system, so I fixed that, made it into a sprite. Fixed ambient sound overlap on spawn, and that was just making it so that when you would spawn in, like if you spawned into a level and there was supposed to be an ambient sound, or if you saved the game and then loaded into the game and you were inside of an ambient area, before the ambient sounds wouldn't detect that they were overlapping you, so they wouldn't be playing. So now they will actually play if you are overlapping them. Redid Jibbed Enemy Sprite, and I'm a lot happier with this one. Before, it was a little too difficult to tell if an enemy was jibbed or not. Now you know. You know for sure. Next, fixed player projectile spawn bug. So there was a little bit of a bug where it would spawn in with an offset, which was kind of strange. So now it's a lot more like you would expect. Improved blood sprites, and that is mostly changing the appearance. I believe I changed their shader, and I think I also changed their brightness a little bit, because before they were a little too bright. Like they were just almost neon to a certain point, depending on the lighting. Now it just looks a lot better. Fixed enemy bleeding location. This is one that I'm very happy with, where if you hit somebody with the hook, then you can apply a bleed effect onto them. And before, what would happen is it would always spawn the bleed effect, one, behind them, and it would always spawn it on the same location, regardless of where you hit them. Now, though, it actually detects where they were hit by the hook, and it will spawn the bleeding effect at that spot on them. So now it feels a lot better. E1M2 visual improvements. I believe that was changing up certain things. Like I think that was adjusting the lighting a little bit. That was moving some things around and just adding some more things in as well. So it looks a lot better now. And then, of course, the traditional, more models, more materials, and more sprites. Always more stuff. We got the E1M6 soundtrack in. Sounds really, really nice. I think Guy did a very good job with that. So I'm very happy with E1M6 overall as a level, but also with the music in it, it just works really, really nicely. So I am extremely happy with E1M6. New Easter egg added in, so hooray for that. Fixed red texture issue on Linux. Yeah, Linux would have a weird problem with the textures where certain textures would come in and they would just be red. And I believe it was textures that were mostly grayscale. If they had colors already, then they were fine, but if they were grayscale, then they would come in red. I don't know why. Linux can be weird with things sometimes, so I fixed that problem, so now all the textures look good. And then I also fixed a texture transparency issue on Linux, and that issue was mostly with things being, well, Linux is kind of notoriously weird with transparency. And, so it was changing it to where it would, instead of having textures that would allow light through them to a certain extent, it would actually just kind of like checkerboard it. So it would gradually fade out this checkerboard effect, which looked really, really bad. So I found the material changes I needed to make in order to fix that, and I applied them not just to the Linux build, but to the overall build of the game. And it is it definitely changes the look of it a little bit. It gives it a much more classic look. The way that it was before had more it had more soft edges on a lot of the textures, but now it is a masked rather than being perfectly being transparent. it's now masked, which means that instead of having things as being, fading out, it just has a hard edge on it. So it doesn't really fade anymore. So it's much more hard edged, which is how those, the old games all looked. And it's a different look for sure. I still like it though. If we look here, you can see even the edge of this tree is a lot more solidly defined. And the edges of everything are more solidly defined, in fact. But let's actually that. I forgot I put that in there. Anyway. Yeah, so we've got much more solid edges everywhere. But I still think it looks good, and I think it fits the style of game very well. I can't exactly say it's better or worse visually. It's just different. So yeah, it is what it is. But the benefit of that is that that's technically a performance increase, because that cuts down on the shader count a lot. Because transparent textures actually, they need a lot of shaders in order to work in the way that they should. Whereas masked materials are a lot more simple, so you don't need as many shaders. So that means a performance boost all around for the texture transparency change. And even the red texture problem technically is a performance increase as well, because it was I believe changes the encoding of it, and so it compresses the textures a bit more, but at no visual it has no visual reduction in quality. So the textures are, I think, 256 by 256. So that's why I say it's technically a performance increase, because you reduce the size of nothing by a fourth. It's technically a smaller amount, but not really any amount that you'd notice. So next, I'm really happy about this one. Added audio ducking for the music. So I got that figured out. So now, whenever you listen to a radio show, or whenever you play one of the arcade games, the music for the level will duck down, so it'll reduce its volume. It doesn't completely go away, but it does reduce. And the nice thing about the effect is that it will fade in and fade out as you move into areas where either the radio show is playing or the music for the arcade game is playing. If it's not playing, though, it won't change it. So I know that's kind of standard for most people who play a game. You might expect it to be like that, but that's one of those things I had no clue how to do. I am very much not an audio guy, and so I'm just happy to have been able to figure that out at all. So I'm glad that it works now. Next, we've got the bowling minigame added, and I am very, very happy with this one. If we go into our where is it? The arcade test room here. See our Dillo Ball Pro cabinet here. Let's actually turn on audio. As you can see, you select which spot to throw it from. You're able to select the angle that you're going to throw it at. You can choose your spin, then choose your power. I don't really know why it loaded in a downed pin, but it'll count it correctly. And it's pretty standard bowling, but you know, it was not easy to get it all put in. This was definitely a challenging one, and has definitely kind of shown me that my little arcade game venture for for just like some little side fun has maybe gotten a little out of hand, but it's very fun to figure out some of these challenges, and the bowling was a challenge for sure in figuring out the scoring system. And the scoring for bowling is one of those things that's simple to explain, but coding that into a machine and making it so that it works correctly all the time, much more difficult. Even the pin setter was an unexpected pain, but got it in, and I am I am very, very happy with this one. It's definitely my most advanced arcade game for sure, but oh, it's fun. So I'm really happy to have that in. Next we got the Creatures and Cryptids radio show. Since I added another arcade game, have to add a radio show as well, and I'm pretty happy with it. It's an interesting one. It's not one of the standard cryptids that you've probably heard of before, but I think it's an interesting one. Okay, so next, this is the main thing that has kind of blocked me for a while, and then there's one that comes a little after that also paused progress a little bit. So removed Steam input, and this sounds like a big negative thing, but so I'll explain it. With having to package the game, I was using a plugin that was to implement Steam input and a bunch of other integration stuff with Steam in general, but the only thing that I had used it for was Steam input. And so I was able to package for Windows fine, and then I tried to package for Linux, and the plugin was blocking it from being able to package. So I went to the support area for the company that made the plugin and was trying to get some help with it, and they just refused to answer for, I think it was about 2 weeks. And so I was basically blocked on being able to release the next alpha build of the game for 2 weeks because I just couldn't get a response from these guys. So, funny enough, after I basically closed the ticket saying that I was going to have to just remove the plugin and go with something else, and then closed the ticket and left the support Discord channel, about an hour later, they try to add me to friends. So, yeah, not a good experience with that company, I will just say. But yeah, so that blocked me for a while, and so that would normally mean that I would have to go in and find a new plugin and restructure everything to work with that plugin for Steam input. But when I was researching it, I found that pretty much nobody uses Steam input anymore. And that's not because developers are lazy. Even Steam themselves don't really keep up with Steam input anymore. And apparently the documentation on Steam input is really lacking and kind of buried, because Valve's priorities just are not with Steam input. And it kind of makes sense if you think about it. So when you're working on, or when you're trying to use a controller for a game on PC, pretty much already have one that works. And that's generally going to be something like an Xbox controller or something that could function or be read as an Xbox controller, a third-party controller. Not many people are trying to use PlayStation controllers for PC, and if they are, then they already know the workarounds for it, which is usually just a program to fake it being an Xbox controller. And so Steam input is really kind of not necessary, and it really is just the main reason for that would be for people using PlayStation controllers, but PlayStation controllers haven't had support on Windows for a long time. And so I think most people already know a PlayStation controller just doesn't work on Windows. And I should mention that it's actually not Microsoft's fault in that case. A lot of people, myself included, would just think, oh, well, Microsoft owns Windows, they own Xbox, so they're not going to let PlayStation controllers work so that you have to buy an Xbox controller. That's actually not the case. It's actually Sony's fault, because Sony charges you to use their API in order to add in support for PlayStation controllers. That's why basically few games, unless they release on PlayStation already, few games have support for PlayStation controllers. If you have just a PC only game, chances are, if it has controller support, only an Xbox controller will work for it. So, all of that to say, Steam input is not really as necessary as I thought it was. So, I removed Steam input support from the store page, I removed it from the game, and I changed up the code so that now it works with just a normal Xbox controller. And it works just fine with an Xbox controller. So, you should just... If you use a controller on PC, you won't really notice that change. Unless you are a very niche case where you try to use like a Switch controller on PC. In which case, I don't know. There's probably a program that'll let you trick the computer into thinking that a Switch controller is an Xbox controller. So, more than likely, any workaround you have for your controller that's not an Xbox controller will work for Maledictor. So, I got that removed and was able to package for Linux. Next, fixed end-level enemies killed and maxed. So, this is just an issue with the game counting the enemies in the level versus how many you killed. Part of that was because I forgot to, since I've been switching over from just having all the enemies in the levels as we started getting bigger levels and needing more enemies, I switched over to the enemy spawning system rather than just having all the enemies in the level, and I forgot to have it count the enemies, like the spawn tokens. So, fixed that. Now it works. Works between saves and everything, so it's all good. And then Alpha Test 4 released. That's another reason why I'm a little light on progress right now, because I'm just giving people time to test it and filling up my bug log and everything. We're going to be getting back to work very soon on it, though. I would be working on it right now, but caught a little bit of a cold over the weekend, so I'm just getting over that right now. You can probably tell something's a little off. Next, increased max sounds from 24 to 128. 128 is kind of the standard amount. 24 is a very low amount, actually. I found that problem when I was just running around with the machine gun, just shooting and just testing the game, and then suddenly the music turned off. So I did that, and then I also changed up the sound priority system a little bit so that now the music should never turn off, because the music is a higher priority sound than all the other sounds. But yeah, so basically, only 24 sounds could be playing at one time. And whenever you would hit more than 24 sounds, it would start taking the older sounds and would start turning them off so the new ones could play. Whereas now I changed it so that it could play 128 sounds all at once, which you will. That's not gonna tax the system at all. If you play any modern game, then you're gonna be going over 24 sounds all the time. Okay. Next, fixed claymores still using particles. Yep, I forgot. I completely forgot about claymores. So now when they blow up, they've switched over to a sprite system as well. Hopefully that will be the last one that's still using particles. I'll have to check. But, you know, as far as I know, that's the last one. So, yeah, we have, as I said, the alpha test going on. And so I'm filling out my little bug notepad of all the things that I need to fix. There's a big problem with the save and load system right now. Well, maybe not necessarily with the system, but with gates. Basically things that activate with a button. Those are kind of broken right now. And also a weird problem with... a weird problem where dead bodies... If you save and load the game really fast, just alternate really fast, dead bodies will get bigger and bigger and bigger, and you can have them like take up the entire screen. I'm not quite certain what's causing that. I have some theories, but I haven't really looked into it yet. So I'm going to be having to dig into the save and load system, just looking into some specific things. But overall, that's the main issue. Kind of a big issue, unfortunately. But if you're able to go through the levels without having to save and load before a gate, then it's been working great. So I've just... I fortunately have gotten very good feedback from my testers so far. Apparently the new weapon balance is working out pretty well. And the enemy variety is working out. The level design is very, very well received. The updates to that, so that's great. It's looking good. Just I wish I could get one of these alpha tests out without some massive, huge bug that just breaks all progress. But soon, hopefully, soon. Hopefully the next time it'll be all set. But anyway, that will be it for this update. Yeah, so once I get these changes fixed, or the problems for the alpha test fixed, we'll be going into E1M7, which is a big level because that is going to be the last normal level of the first episode. Once I get that done, then it'll be into E1M8, which is a boss level, and I'm kind of doing the blood thing, where the boss level is its own... It's basically kind of like an arena. So it'll be a lot more... not necessarily simple in terms of design, but in terms of layout, it'll be simpler. It should be a little bit more straightforward, but who knows? With the amount of level design elements I'll have to do, it might... maybe it'll be the longest level yet. In terms of development time, anyway. We'll find out, but next up, bug fixes and E1M7. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. I will see you next update. Have a good one, everyone.